one summer I moved camping to Rattlesnake Camp and set up there, and during the night the dogs, I didn't hear them, but the herder said that the dogs had barked all night, and he had told me that the next morning the dogs had barked all night and he didn't get hardly any sleep. And so we went out to the sheep that next morning and put them where we wanted them for the day, and it was probably 9-10 o'clock when we came back to camp, and the dogs ran over to that tree, and started barking up the tree. And I said, "There's something up that tree," and the herder's name was Chuck. He said, probably a squirrel." So I walked over and looked up that tree, and there was a bear in that tree. So he had spent part of the night there, and I don't know what time during the night, but he had spent part of the night there, and until 9-10 o'clock when we got back, he was still in the tree.
So right here is an old telephone line. They call it telephone or telegraph?
A phone line.
Just a whole phone line pole that went from lookout to lookout up here in the high country. They would bury it in the ground and stack rocks around it. It's coming from that way.
Lake Creek Point.
Lake Creek Point right over there. You can probably see another one right on the skyline.
Yep.
And then it was headed
to Hard Butte.
To Hard Butte. You can't see from here.
There's still a staple at the top of it on this other side. Where to hold the insulator.
Oh. Yep. That was for the insulator. Wire down at the bottom still. Here we are at Devil's Hole Camp, we think. There were two spots very close to each other that could have been the camp. We did not find any old camp stuff here, but Dad and Ted did remember one thing.
Yeah, 12 inches of snow, did you say? Or 6? Oh, it was the 6th of July.
12th of August.
12th of August, 12 inches of snow.
12th of August, I woke up one morning here to 6 inches of new snow.
I was with you. It was either here or back down the trail.
The year that we were down there, you and yeah, remember on the 4th of July it frosted?
I don't remember, but it probably did.
You and Peggy went out that day, but it frosted on the 4th of July. And then your mother and I took the sheep there's a trail that goes right off down in the bottom down there. We took the pack string right off into the bottom, and about right in there, a snow slide had come off the hill, so we spent, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours cutting the trail out so we could get on up through there. And there's a campsite just the other side of where this ridge comes down in the bottom down there, about
Below that falls?
right in below that falls. There's a camp spot in there, and we set up camp there.
There should have been one right here someplace. There wasn't?
It's right over here.
Okay, because there's a lot of feed down there.
Yeah, we spent time in here
Okay.
with the sheep.
I caught a bear right in here someplace.
Man.
Down, maybe down further.
Yeah.
I didn't appreciate how steep that stuff was where you're taking the sheep. I thought you were just on all these open parks out here. I didn't know you were.
Okay, Goat Lake's right there.
Where that waterfall's coming out.
That's coming out of Goat Lake?
Goat Lake would be the...
You see that next water up there coming down along that green patch?
Yeah.
Goat Lake's right in that little basin right there.
Okay.
Ask him why he took the sheep down in there. I don't know.
You took the sheep up that?
Down in there.
Down
From
into...
the top, we brought them down in there. And we would bed them down in there. We wouldn't let them out of there for 2 or 3 days and keep them down in there. But we were right on that ridge. That ridge right there is where we came around.
Yesterday.
Point.
Yeah.
The
About
highest
this,
point there's probably where we quit, huh?
Yeah.
That's the tallest point. I think we come through over the ridge on this side of that.
So we're further down the ridge. Over there on that rock, all that rock, there's one more of those telephone poles. And then right here close, there's one right there. And then there's one more right up here. So we got several poles around here that haven't, these are put in the 1920s or 30s. They're still standing. We lost the trail trying to find the next sheep camp, but we came across this wall tent that must have been left from the last hunting season. It is very common to get an early season snowstorm in this high country that blocks access to get back in and get camp. While we were at the tent, we found what looked like a very old camp. I think the tree says 50. This was probably an old sheep camp from one of the other families in the area that also ran sheep. We couldn't find the camp we used to use in this area. There was a lot of blowdown and things had changed quite a bit, so we moved on to find the next one. We came across this mule on the way to the next camp. He jumped right in with us until we stopped at the next camp. When we headed out, he stayed there.
There was one of the neighbor's cows died right here under these trees.
Hey, they're both mules.
So we set a bear trap And I think the first night he come into it, didn't get caught, but the second night he did. And we had a little Australian Shepherd type dog, and the dog ran in and grabbed the bear, and the bear scooped him up with both front hands, front feet, and started biting at him. And Glenn and I, we were carrying 22 pistols. We just stepped up to him and started emptying our pistols into him, and he turned the dog loose. We ended up killing the bear, but I think he broke that dog's leg. Yeah, he did. He broke that dog's front leg.
So this is Indian Springs Camp. Right here, right in front of this tree is where the tent used to sit. But the cows are in here and they've pretty much tore it all up.
And it was a snowstorm. We hit a snowstorm. It was probably snowing when we left. And your mother and I went over here through the saddle. We were going to go down to the pickup, but it was snowing so hard we couldn't hardly see where we were going. So we ended up turning around and coming back to camp. Were you here when we did that? And this is where your mother, we had our camp, or sheep was bedded up here on top, and there was a lightning storm moved in. We had our sleeping tent up there, and so your mother didn't want to sleep up there, so she talked me into sleeping down here. And we the cots were here, so we either went and got our sleeping bags and come back down and slept here, or we had sleeping bags here. I don't remember, but anyway, within about from here to that mule or so from where the tent set, there was 5 dead sheep the next morning. Lightning had hit right there and killed them.
Up on top of that point?
On top of the sheep mountain up there.
Huh. Yeah, I'd heard that story my whole life, and this is where it was, huh?
And so they were over in the Marshall Mountain country at 10 and 12, herding a band of sheep by themselves. And they had a 22 rifle or 22 pistol with them. And I stayed here with these sheep, and I stayed with the sheep herder. And at 11, we'd saddle up the mules, and I'd go to the ranch and pick up supplies once a week and come back. And it'd take about, 3 hours down, 4 hours back or so. I think I spent the night and come back, but still, on a good saddle horse, you might make it up here in 3 hours, but if he's not a good horse and not in good shape, it'd take you about 4 hours to get up here from the ranch. And then we just steadily kept moving further and further away.
So, how old were you doing that?
I was 11.
So, what happens if you had a problem with a saddle on the way up?
Well, I remember one time a bag of salt came off, I think, because your grandfather would pack them up, and one bag of salt came off, and I ended up, I guess I didn't know how to tie it back on or whatever. Anyway, I put it in my saddle, and I was clear down like at bear camp, or I mean bear paw, or any of that, saddle above Jolly Springs.
I know what you're talking about. I just don't, because I don't know the correct name for it.
Anyway, it rode in my saddle from up right above Jolly Springs to here, because I couldn't get it tied back on. So, well, after in a minute, but this would be one of the poles that was around the tent
To protect the tent?
from cattle getting into it and horses when you're not here, and yeah.
I didn't realize you had stuff around the tent. I thought you just had the tent themselves.
This place and dry camp.
Oh, because they'd come up from the bottom.
well, you had cattle coming in through here, and so they keep them out of your tent and keep the horses out of your tent. We
Oh,
had these poles. I just wonder how this got clear up here. Do you realize how old that is?
Pretty old.
were they there before you were? You used the same ones over and over,
Yeah, I'll bet that was.
or they never came down actually, huh? It was like a
No.
fence.
So, okay.
No, we didn't take the fence thing down.
I saw the mule looking at it.
Oh, but that was probably in the 60s.
See that wire?
Yep.
It's old telephone wire.
Yeah, he stole that.
Staple in it.
Give it to somebody who wants it.
Our teepee probably about right here somewhere. I'm not sure. Maybe Ted was in the camp. Maybe there's a herder in the camp. I'm not sure, but we set our teepee up right here. In the middle of the night, your mother came alive, and out the door she went, and she says, "There's ants crawling all over the place." So we had to take our bags out of the tent and shake all the bants out of them, and then we had to move. we set up on top of an anthill, maybe right here somewhere.
Huh. This spot always holds snow way into summer. My parents would bring feed sacks from camp and sled down it.
Dixie, what are you?
This was called Wayne and Bill Camp.
Yeah.
Tent sat right over there in those trees. Right there. Some old cut logs. And there's a nice creek flowing through here. So we found the old tent poles right here that they used to use to hold their wall tent up.